this went before the zoning board of review, and it needed relief. The planning board often makes recommendations to provide relief to a property owner or a developer. Isn't that the same process that they follow? They make a recommendation to the town council. What would be the difference?
I'd have to go back to the statute and see if there's minor differences. My opinion is it's virtually the same. The problem here is that the application for zoning change came in after that decision that said you should change the statute in certain ways. They didn't consider the language, the actual language that was being proposed, which came in this most recent May 23rd application. And how do we know it's a new, a change? Because they wouldn't have to file a new application. They filed one with their original application for a zoning change. But they wanted to alter that. They wanted the town council to do it a different way, to have specific language. That should have been considered by the planning board, and then a recommendation, as you said, Mr. Bird, should have then gone to the town council prior to making a decision. So it's a similar process, just wasn't followed here in our view. Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Abutter, the freeze process that he's speaking of, is this the true process?
The stay?
Yes.
So once there is a provision for an automatic stay, my understanding has always been, based on my review of the case law, is that the stay applies to any further proceedings before that body, in furtherance of that. I mean, the town council, in my estimation, has the ability to consider any sort of ordinance change. That's within their jurisdiction. I think to suggest that the town can't legislate on any particular issue because there's a pending appeal before the zoning board based on the planning board decision is, I think, a stretch. But, at least my review of the case law suggests that. But you can listen to what council has to say, and I'm sure Mr. MacGillivray may disagree with me on that.
Can I just address that very shortly, Mr. O'Hara? There are plenty of cases where, and this happened, I think, in Exeter very recently, where the applicant comes forward. I think this was a solar farm, was the most recent one, and they do everything they're supposed to do. And the town council, who doesn't like the project, a little different this one, doesn't like the project, tries to come in and change the ordinance. And the Superior Courts have said, no, you can't do that. Once there's substantial completion of an application, the applicant, and argue everybody else, has vested rights in what that ordinance says.
And I think what you're referring to is vested rights in accordance with the law at the time that the application was substantially complete. In this case, what's happening is that the applicant it's the reverse of that. Okay, he's not being divested of right. He would be under the old, arguably under the old ordinance, and so in his application, it came with a request for a zone change, is my understanding, and the public hearing was reopened on that at the last meeting. So, but I don't want to make argument. I don't want to make argument for the other parties. I just want to advise the board.
And just out of fairness, I'll just add one point that then I'll be quiet and sit down and promise unless someone has questions. The ordinance does not say that. If you read the ordinance, it doesn't say the town council can't change it just if the applicant objects. It says an automatic stay of all proceedings. It doesn't say to whom it has to benefit. So that is not part of the ordinance.
May I ask you a question? It seems fairly circular what you're saying. If the planning board asks for a zoning change and somebody appeals it, like your clients did,
Yep.
how does the zoning board ever change anything?
I would-
How does the town council ever change anything? Because you've stopped the process.
That's an excellent question. So the statute says that it's only stayed until the time of appeal. So as soon as you guys bang the gavel and issue a decision, the stay is over, town council can do whatever they want. All right? But you are stepping into the shoes of the planning board. Rules aren't being changed in midstream. You're applying the same rules that were in place then.
In 2008.
Well, I should correct that, to my argument about substantial completion, I don't think they can change the rules until the applicant resubmits. As soon as they resubmit, they can change the rules. And what should happen here is they should have asked for a zoning change first and then come in with their application. They didn't put the cart before the horse.
Doesn't the statute say they can do it simultaneously?
Well,
I thought that's what,
that's what Andy said, yeah.
452361B, right?
Yeah, there's a process, but again, so there's a process where they can do that, but again, as Mr. Burke pointed out, it's similar to the process between the planning board and zoning board for variances, except in this case, the change, and this is a separate argument, the change is conditional. So even if the town council was correct to change it, the statute specifically says it can change it conditional upon further action by the planning board. Nothing has happened by the planning board has not acted. That change remains a conditional change, conditioned on something else happening. It's just not in full force and effect right now.
How
So
could
you have
that be
to-
remedied, that particular item?
How can that be, how can,
Yes, how could the town correct that?
well, they don't, they have to.
And I'm not saying they did it right or wrong, I'm just
Yeah.
asking you what your opinion.
Sure. So what they have to do before the, town doesn't have to do anything, before the statute takes effect, this has to work its way through to final approval. So, and then, just like the zoning board, where things are done conditionally, and then whatever board finally gives final approval, it all kind of fits in place. The approval of the zoning change was conditional until the planning board finally acts.
I thought the approval of the project and the parameters of the project were conditional based on the zone change. That was my interpretation of the process that was being used.
Yeah, I think the zoning, my reading of it is that the actual zoning change is conditional.
The whole project was reviewed and conditionally approved with the intent that it would move to the town council for further approval.
Sure, that was conditional as well. That was a conditional approval based upon getting conditional approval from the town council. Then it goes back to the planning board for final review.
So when it went to the zoning board and they made a recommendation and they provided conditional improvement with approval with a recommendation, I'm pretty sure it doesn't go back to the planning board.
No, I mean, that is slightly different. They make, going back to my time.
I'm trying to see why it's
Yeah,
different.
my time on the zoning board, they would make a recommendation, I suppose, as to, they give conditional approval and make recommendations as to the variances that needed to be granted. And upon those variances being granted, that conditional approval would become final and in effect. And so what I'm saying here is, we haven't gotten to the point where the conditional, either the conditional master plan approval or the conditional change in the ordinance has become in effect because the planning board hasn't finally acted. In your instance, the zoning board, I think, is typically the last, if I remember correctly, the last board to rule on it, although it might go back to the planning board once the zoning ordinances are approved.
My intent in asking these questions is just to try to weed through what
Understood.
seemed like a straightforward process that's become very
Yeah.
complicated.
Convoluted.
Yeah.
That's exactly
You
the same.
delve into it, and the ordinances are clear, though. They say it's a conditional approval. And so the question is, can you apply an ordinance that has only been conditionally approved? Because that's its status right now.
There's the legal part, which you're bringing up, and then there's the practical matter of getting a project, and getting it approved and getting it done.
And
So,
we may be kind of letting the tail swing the dog here. these other issues regarding density and long-term housing are really the thrust of the argument. And requested those be considered as well.
You brought it up.
No, I did.
Mr. Alvarado, can I ask you a question? So, in all of this, do you think that the town council acted properly, changing this midway through the stream of this?
I can't really comment, and you're not to comment, that it's not your purview, you're not an appellate body for the legislative body. I mean, I think that's an area that's off limits to you, is to try to determine whether or not the town council acted within their authority properly or committed error.
That's
Mr.
what I'm-
MacGillivray's clients have their rights, it's not before you. That's a separate action if they feel that the town council acted inappropriately. That's not within your
And
jurisdiction.
it's not on part of the appeal, there's no appeal before us.
On the propriety of the ordinance, the zone change, no, that's not before you.
I agree with that, but what my argument is that their recommendation, they haven't reviewed the actual ordinance yet to make a
And
recommendation.
when you say who, you're talking about the
The
planning
planning
board?
board has not done that. They reviewed something, I guess, we don't know what that was, but it certainly wasn't the application for a zoning change that came later.
So would the process be that the town council went ahead and they made a change and then they have to go back to the planning board for them to approve it?
I think it should go back to the planning board for them to consider this renewed application that was made after their decision, so that they can actually give the town council a recommendation the way they're supposed to.
We'll probably recommend what the town council modified. That's,
But they haven't done that. They haven't done that yet, and they need to, and that's procedural error.